Ever feel like you're living someone else's life?
Yeah.
Like the person you wake up next to is a stranger.
Mm.
That's what happened to Susan Kuhnhausen,
Oh,
a
wow.
woman whose ordinary life took a terrifying turn after 17 years of marriage.
Yeah, that's what's really unsettling about this case is how it kind of reveals the hidden dangers lurking beneath the surface of everyday life.
Right.
We always think violence comes from strangers,
Yeah.
but it can come from the people we trust the most.
Exactly. We're going to explore a chilling tale of a botched murder-for-hire plot.
Oh, wow.
But it's so much more than just a true crime story.
Yeah.
It's about one woman's strength and resilience and how important self-defense can be.
Absolutely. And we'll be looking at a detailed account from the Willamette Week,
Okay.
a local paper in Portland, Oregon, where it all happened. It gives a really comprehensive overview of everything that happened.
Yeah.
The investigation, the trial.
Gotcha.
And we're also going to be using some insights from a My Favorite Murder podcast episode, where Susan actually shares her experience in her own words, which is pretty powerful.
It's so important to hear her voice. Behind all the headlines and court documents,
Yeah.
there's a real person who get through something unimaginable.
Yeah, definitely.
So before we get into the scary events of that night,
Okay.
let's set the scene and introduce you to Susan.
Okay, so imagine Portland, Oregon, early 1980s.
Okay.
Susan's a young, vibrant ER nurse, new in town, building a life for herself. She's well-liked by her colleagues, known for her outgoing personality and her dedication to her patients.
Sounds like someone you'd want on your side in a crisis, right?
Oh, for sure.
Someone cool under pressure,
Yeah.
knows how to handle tough situations. Little did she know that those very skills would one day be essential to her survival.
Exactly. Now, fast forward to 1988.
Okay.
Susie's in her early 30s, and she decides to try her luck with a singles ad in the Willamette Week.
Oh, wow. I remember those days.
Yeah.
Sometimes those ads are pretty funny.
They were.
What did Susan say?
Well, she described herself as overweight, but not over life, which I think says a lot about her sense of humor and her self-acceptance.
Yeah.
She was looking for someone different, someone who valued genuine connection over just superficial appearances.
Good for her. Sounds like she was confident and knew what she wanted.
Yeah, and that's when Mike Kuhnhausen enters the picture.
Okay.
Mike, 39 years old, responded to Susan's ad. He was initially drawn to her voice on the phone and her willingness to have, deep conversations.
That deep conversations thing can be a bit of a red flag, right?
Oh, yeah.
I've heard abusers often use that to create a sense of intimacy and trust early on.
That's a good point. While it's not always a sign of manipulation,
Right.
It's something to watch out for, especially in the early stages.
Totally. So how did things progress between Susan and Mike?
Well, they had their first date in February of '88,
Okay.
and within a year, they eloped to Reno.
Wow. A whirlwind romance.
It was.
But as we'll see, things took a dark turn pretty quickly. It's like that saying, marry in haste, repent at leisure. But for Susan, it was so much more than regret.
Right.
The cracks in their relationship started showing almost immediately.
They did. Susan described how their activities dwindled. No more hiking, no more going out.
Right.
It paints a picture of a controlling dynamic emerging,
Yeah.
and Mike slowly isolating Susan from her friends and her hobbies.
Classic abuser behavior, right?
It is.
They try to cut you off from your support system so they have more control.
Exactly.
Did Mike show any other red flags?
He did. Susan revealed that he constantly questioned her about her plans, monitored her spending,
Oh, wow.
and criticized what she bought.
Oof.
He had this really pessimistic outlook on life, described it as a nasty sandwich where you just keep taking bites until it's over?
Oh, that's depressing.
Yeah.
Sounds like he was trying to bring her down emotionally.
Yeah. And on top of all that, Mike took a job as a janitorial supervisor
Yeah?
for a company that owned an adult video store. While there's nothing inherently wrong with that line of work,
Of course.
it's interesting how that environment might have affected his mindset.
Yeah.
It's another layer of complexity to this already unsettling picture.
Yeah. It makes you wonder what kind of person he was becoming in that environment.
Right.
Sadly, despite Susan trying to make things work,
Yeah.
things kept getting worse. After 17 years of marriage, she reached her breaking point.
She did?
In September of 2005, a year before the attack, Susan told Mike she wanted a divorce and asked him to move out.
Wow.
A decision that should have been a fresh start,
Yeah,
a chance for her to reclaim her life.
absolutely.
But instead, it set in motion a terrifying chain of events.
It did. It's September 2006, a year after Susan asked Mike to move out. He's living with his dad,
Oh,
but they're still in contact, which is a crucial point here.
okay.
It kind of challenges this idea that when people separate in these situations, they're safe.
Yeah, you always hear people say, well, why didn't she just leave?
Right.
But it's not that simple.
No, it's not. Often the danger gets worse after a separation because the abuser feels like they're losing control.
Right.
And Susan's story really shows how true that is.
Right.
So picture this. It's Wednesday, September 6th, 2006.
Correct.
Susan finishes her shift at the hospital, and she decides to treat herself to a hair appointment at this place called the Perfect Look Hair Salon.
A little self-care amidst a stressful divorce.
Right.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Does she have any idea what was waiting for her at home?
Not at all. She gets home that evening, expecting a quiet night in.
Right.
But as she walks into the house, things just feel off.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah.
When something feels off in your own home.
Right.
Like your intuition is screaming at you.
It's our instincts kicking in,
Right.
warning us about danger.
Right.
And for Susan, that danger was real.
No.
As she enters her bedroom,
Yeah.
a man suddenly lunges at her from behind the door.
I can't imagine the terror she must have felt.
I know it's a nightmare.
A complete stranger invading your space.
Yeah, totally. This guy was dressed normally,
Okay.
but he had these yellow rubber gloves on.
Okay, that's creepy.
It is. And he had this weapon, a red and black claw hammer.
A claw hammer. That's brutal. It's not about just hurting someone.
Right.
It's about causing serious, fatal damage.
Exactly.
What kind of person would choose that?
Yeah, it's scary. It shows he planned to cause harm,
Right.
which is really disturbing. And he didn't hesitate. His first swing hit Susan right on her left temple.
Oh my gosh.
It was a vicious attack aimed at knocking her out.
That's awful. What's amazing is that Susan didn't freeze.
I know, right?
Her ER training kicked in.
It did.
She knew her only chance was to fight back.
Exactly. Years of working in the ER had given her more than medical knowledge.
Yeah.
She'd had self-defense training,
Okay.
learning how to break free from holds, defend herself in close quarters,
Wow.
and most importantly, how to stay calm in these intense situations.
So her medical training actually saved her life. It's incredible how skills you learn for one thing can help you in unexpected ways.
For sure. And that training was so valuable in this fight for her life.
Yeah.
Instead of backing away,
Right.
Susan instinctively pressed herself against her attacker,
Wow.
knowing that being closer would limit the force of the hammer swings.
That's incredible thinking under pressure.
It is.
So she was using her body as a shield.
Basically, what was going through her mind?
Yeah, did she try to talk to him?
She did. She yelled at him, asking him who he was and what he wanted. But he didn't say anything.
Wow.
The only words he said during the whole attack were, "You're strong."
That's chilling.
It is. It's
Yeah.
like he admired her strength even while trying to kill her.
Yeah, really unsettling.
It shows the twisted thinking behind violence.
Right.
But Susan wasn't going to let this stranger decide her fate.
Right. So as they kept struggling, did she get an advantage at all?
It was hard. She was 5 inches shorter than him
Right.
and had 2 bad knees. So physically, she was at a disadvantage. But she fought with everything she had.
Yeah,
And for a moment, she actually got the hammer away from him.
she did.
Yeah, and hit him a few times in the head.
It's amazing how much strength adrenaline gives you.
It is. Unfortunately, he got the hammer back.
Oh, no.
And they moved into the hallway.
Oh.
But he punched her, splitting her lip and knocked her to the floor.
Oh, my gosh.
As he stood over her, hammer raised.
Yeah,
She thought it was over.
I can't even imagine.
I know. But even then, her survival instincts took over.
Yeah.
Desperate to figure out who he was,
Mm-hmm.
she started searching his pockets for some kind of ID.
Wow.
She even bit him repeatedly on his arm, his side, his thigh.
It's like a cornered animal fighting for its life.
It was pure survival.
Right.
She was thinking ahead, even if she didn't make it,
Yeah.
any evidence she could find might help catch him.
Right. So did she find anything?
She found his wallet and a pay stub,
Okay.
but more importantly, something clicked inside her. She knew this might be her only chance.
Yes.
So she pulled him to the floor, got on top of him,
Uh-huh.
and somehow put him in a chokehold.
She became the weapon.
She did. She later said she felt like a downed power line snapping on the pavement,
Wow.
which is a powerful image.
It is. How long did this go on for? It must have felt like forever.
The fight lasted 14 minutes.
Oh, my God.
It's hard to imagine what that must have been like,
Yeah.
but in the end, the chokehold worked. He stopped moving.
Wow.
Susan took her chance, grabbed the hammer, and ran to her neighbors for help.
Like something out of a movie.
It is?
It feels like the climax. But there's still so many unanswered questions.
Yeah.
Who was this guy?
Right.
And why did he attack her? So Susan ran to her neighbors and called for help.
Right.
I bet the police had a lot of questions.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't a normal break-in. The police arrived and found Susan injured but alive.
Yeah.
And the attacker dead on her bedroom floor.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And remember, she searched his pockets during the fight.
Yeah, she did.
Did she find anything useful?
She did. His wallet and a pay stub were key to figuring out this whole messed up plot.
Really?
Yeah, the pay stub linked the attacker to Mike, Susan's husband.
No way. Are you saying Mike hired this guy to kill her?
He did. The investigation showed that Mike had hired the attacker.
Wow.
A 59-year-old Vietnam vet named Edward Haffey.
A Vietnam vet. That's not what you expect.
It just goes to show you can't judge a book by its cover.
Right.
People have complex pasts, and sometimes things take a dark turn.
Yeah.
And for Haffey, it turned out he had a long criminal history, including a conviction for arranging the murder of his ex-girlfriend back in '91.
Wow. So he'd done this before.
He had. It's scary to think he was even free to be hired for another hit.
That's true. It makes you think about the justice system.
It does.
And whether enough is done to protect people from these kinds of repeat offenders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what was Mike's reason for wanting Susan dead?
Yeah, I know they were divorcing.
Yeah.
But was there more to it?
Well, it turned out Mike was in big financial trouble.
Really?
Yeah, he lost his job, was deep in debt.
Oh, wow.
He stood to inherit Susan's life insurance and their house if she died.
So he thought killing her would fix his money problems. That's cold.
It is.
Did they have any kids together?
That's a good question.
They didn't, which maybe made it easier for him to do what he did.
Right.
But that's no excuse. If he wanted to make it look like a random break-in, shouldn't he have hired someone Susan didn't know?
Yeah, it seems like that would make more sense.
You'd think so. But Mike wasn't the smartest criminal.
Okay.
The police found evidence linking him to the crime pretty quickly.
Really?
Oh, yeah. For one thing, there were no signs of forced entry.
Oh, right.
And security records showed someone had turned off the alarm while Susan was at work.
So he basically led them right to him.
Pretty much.
Uh-huh.
Did he at least admit what he did?
That's what I want to know.
At first, he denied everything, but the evidence was too strong.
Okay.
In 2007, he pleaded guilty to planning Susan's murder and was sent to prison.
Well, at least he was held accountable.
There was that one detail that always stuck with me.
Yeah.
Remember that Hershey's syrup found in Haffey's backpack?
Oh, yeah. That seems strange at first.
It did.
But the autopsy showed Haffey had a crazy amount of cocaine in his system when he died.
Wow.
Some people think he mixed the chocolate with the cocaine to make it easier to take.
That's pretty dark.
It is. It just shows how unpredictable drug use can be.
Right.
And how it can lead to dangerous and reckless behavior.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that this case involved real people with complicated lives.
Absolutely.
Not just characters in a story. What happened to Susan after all this?
It's incredible. She didn't just survive, but she thrived afterward.
Yeah.
She kept working as a nurse for a while, using her experience to connect with patients who had also been through trauma.
That's amazing.
It is. But eventually she felt like she needed to do more.
Did she get into some kind of advocacy work?
Exactly. She became a motivational speaker, sharing her story to inspire others,
Wow.
and a self-defense instructor, empowering women to protect themselves.
That's amazing. She turned her pain into something positive.
She did. She even helped create a website where crime victims can track their cases and find support resources.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is. It shows her dedication to helping others deal with the justice system.
For sure. It sounds like she found a way to use a terrible experience for good.
She did. Susan's story really shows the strength of the human spirit.
Absolutely.
It reminds us that even in the darkest times, there's hope, healing, and the possibility for change.
It also reminds us this can happen anywhere, to anyone.
That's true.
We need to talk about these things, raise awareness, and support people who've been affected by violence.
I agree. Knowing more is always better.
Right.
And by understanding abusive relationships, seeing the warning signs, and learning to defend ourselves, we can all help make the world a safer place for everyone.
Well said. For those listening, I encourage you to check out the full accounts of Susan's story in the Willamette Week and the My Favorite Murder podcast.
Yeah, they're worth reading and listening to.
It's a scary story, but it's also a story of courage, resilience, and the power of the human spirit.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into this remarkable story.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.